I'm Laura, 31 years old. My parents just told me I need to pay for my sister's wedding or disappear from their lives forever. The ultimatum came during Sunday dinner at my own dining table in my own house that I've been paying for while they lived here for 3 years. Madison sat there with that smug little smile of hers, the same one she's worn since childhood, whenever she got something I didn't. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt taken advantage of by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Now let me tell you how we got here. See, my parents moved in when Dad lost his job at the accounting firm 3 years ago. Just temporary, they said. Right. Temporary like a root canal. They arrived with 2 suitcases and somehow managed to redecorate my entire living room with their old furniture. Mom immediately started rearranging my kitchen cabinets because efficiency matters, dear. Dad claimed the home office for his job search activities, which apparently consisted of watching golf tutorials on YouTube. I should mention that at 31, I've been working since I was 16. Paid my way through college with scholarships and 3 jobs, graduated law school at 25 with massive debt, and spent the last 6 years building my practice. When I finally made senior associate 2 years ago, I thought I'd reached some kind of stability. Wrong again. The first red flag should have been when they gave Madison the master bedroom. My master bedroom. She needs more space for her things, Mom explained, while I stood there holding my own clothes. I ended up in what used to be my guest room, sleeping on a twin bed I'd bought for visiting friends. But hey, I'm a lawyer. I can adapt, right? Wrong. The bills started piling up immediately. Suddenly, my electric bill tripled because someone needed the house at 72 degrees year-round. My grocery budget exploded because Dad developed a taste for organic everything, and Mom decided she was a gourmet cook. When I mentioned the increased expenses, Mom patted my hand and said, "Oh, sweetheart, family takes care of family. You understand." I understood all right. I understood that I was financing their retirement while they treated me like the hired help in my own home. Madison would leave her laundry in the washer for days until it molded, then complain when I moved it. Dad would use my car without asking, returning it with an empty gas tank and mysterious stains on the seats. When I brought up basic household rules, they'd exchange those looks. You know the ones. The poor Laura is being difficult again looks. The breaking point had been building for months. Every time I walked into my own house and felt like a guest. Every time I paid bills that had doubled while my personal spending disappeared. Every time someone used the phrase, "our house," when talking about my property. But I'd been raised to believe that family always comes first, that successful people help others, that questioning family dynamics made you selfish. The final straw came last month when I found out they'd been telling people I was struggling financially, and they moved in to help me. Help me. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned how sweet it was that my parents were supporting me through my difficult time. I nearly choked on my morning coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" I set down my fork carefully, that lawyer training kicking in. Stay calm. Gather information. Don't show your hand until you're ready to play it. "The wedding," Mom said, reaching for more potatoes like she hadn't just asked me to fund my sister's fairy tale. "We've looked into it, and $28,000 should cover everything. The venue, flowers, dress, photographer. Madison found the most beautiful place in Napa Valley." Napa Valley, of course, because a local venue would be too pedestrian for Princess Madison. I glanced at my sister, who was examining her manicure like the fate of her future happiness wasn't being decided at my kitchen table. "That's a lot of money," I said carefully. "It's an investment in family," Dad replied. And I swear he used the same tone he'd used when convincing me to let them temporarily move in. Madison only gets married once. We want to do it right. Actually, this would be Madison's second engagement. The first one ended when she decided her fiancé wasn't ambitious enough. But who's keeping track? Certainly not the parents who'd spent my college fund on her gap year in Europe while I worked 3 jobs to pay tuition. For weeks now, I'd been having this growing feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with our family dynamic. It started small, noticing how conversations always centered on Madison's needs, how my achievements were acknowledged with brief nods before pivoting to her latest drama. I'd been in therapy for the past 6 months, finally dealing with years of putting everyone else's needs before my own. "Have you considered that maybe Madison and Tyler should pay for their own wedding?" I asked. You know, like most adults do. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Mom's smile became one of those plastic things you see on mannequins. "Laura, don't be selfish. Tyler just graduated law school. He has student loans. They're just starting out." Just starting out. Right. Tyler's parents owned half of San Francisco real estate. But sure, let's pretend he was some struggling peasant. Meanwhile, I'd been just starting out for 15 years while bankrolling my family's lifestyle. What if I can't afford it? I tried a different approach. 28,000 is my entire emergency fund. Then you'll figure it out, Dad said, cutting into his steak with unnecessary force. That's what successful people do. They make things happen for family. Successful people, I almost laughed. 3 years ago, this successful person had been unemployed and facing foreclosure until his daughter bailed him out. But selective memory runs strong in my family, apparently. Madison finally looked up from her nails. I mean, it's not like you have anything else to spend it on, she said with that little shrug that had infuriated me since childhood. You're single, you never travel, you just work all the time. At least this way your money would go towards something meaningful. Something meaningful. 15 years of working multiple jobs, 6 years of building a legal career, and living like a monk so I could support 3 adults who treated me like an ATM. And my sister thought my life lacked meaning. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had warned me this moment would come. When you start setting boundaries, she'd said, people who've benefited from your lack of boundaries will push back hard. They'll use guilt, manipulation, and ultimatums to restore the status quo. What happens if I say no? I asked. The silence that followed was loaded. Mom and Dad exchanged one of their patented looks, the kind that had preceded every major family decision that somehow never included my input. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a verdict. Then you're not the daughter we raised, he said finally. Family comes first, Laura. Always. If you can't understand that basic principle, then maybe you need to think about what's really important in your life. And if family is so important, Mom added, leaning forward with that concerned expression she'd perfected over the years, then you'll want to do everything you can to make Madison's day special. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Once in a lifetime. Like my childhood, which they'd spent showing me exactly where I ranked in the family hierarchy. Like my college graduation, which they'd missed because Madison had a tennis tournament. Like every birthday, holiday, and achievement that had been overshadowed by whatever crisis or celebration revolved around my sister. I looked around my own dining room, at the family who'd invaded my space and my life, demanding I fund their dreams while treating my own like inconvenient afterthoughts. The crystal chandelier I'd saved 6 months to buy cast shadows on their expectant faces. The hardwood floors I'd refinished myself gleamed under their feet. Dr. Chen's voice echoed in my head. You can't control how others react to your boundaries. You can only control whether you maintain them. I need to think about it, I said finally. What's to think about? Madison's voice took on that whiny quality that had always gotten her whatever she wanted. Either you care about family or you don't. Either you want me to be happy or you're jealous that I found someone who loves me. Jealous. There it was. The accusation that had followed me my entire life whenever I dared to want something for myself. Jealous when Madison got the bigger bedroom. Jealous when she got a car for her 16th birthday while I got a part-time job. Jealous when our parents paid for her college while I took out loans. I'm not jealous, I said quietly. I'm tired. Tired of what? Dad demanded. Having a family who loves you? Having people in your life who've sacrificed for you? The question hit something that had been building for months of therapy sessions. What exactly have you sacrificed for me? Silence. I could see them scrambling for examples, coming up empty. Because the truth was, I'd been the one sacrificing. I'd sacrificed my social life to work extra hours. I'd sacrificed relationships because I was always stressed about money. I'd sacrificed my peace of mind to keep them comfortable. We gave you a place to live, Mom said finally. You gave me a place to live, I repeated slowly. In my own house. That I pay for. Don't be dramatic, Madison said, rolling her eyes. You act like we're some burden. Have you ever experienced that moment when you finally see a situation clearly? When the fog lifts and you realize how far you've drifted from shore? That was me, sitting in my own dining room, listening to my family explain why my money belonged to them. Dr. Chen had prepared me for this moment, but experiencing it was different from discussing it in theory. I'm going to need some time to consider this. How much time? Mom asked, and I could hear the edge in her voice. The venue needs a deposit. I'll let you know tomorrow. I started clearing plates, a domestic routine that felt suddenly foreign. Tonight, I need to think. But I already knew what I was going to say. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Madison's smug face and heard Dad's ultimatum echoing in my head. By 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee, standing in my kitchen watching the sunrise through windows I'd paid to have installed. I called Dr. Chen's emergency line, something I'd never done before. Laura, her calm voice came through the phone. What's happening? I told her about dinner, about the ultimatum, about the $28,000 demand. As I spoke, I could hear my own voice getting stronger, clearer. How are you feeling right now? She asked. Angry, but also free? Like I finally see the situation for what it really is. And what is it? Financial abuse. Emotional manipulation. A family that's never seen me as anything more than a resource to be exploited. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? I want them out of my house. Then that's your answer. I called in sick to work and spent the morning preparing. I researched tenant laws, though as guests rather than renters, my family had fewer protections. I called a locksmith to schedule new locks. I even looked up moving companies because whatever happened next, I wanted to be ready. At 7 a.m., I knocked on Dad's door. He answered in his bathrobe, annoyed. We need to talk, I said. About what? About you moving out. Today. His face went through several expressions before settling on disbelief. You can't be serious. I'm giving you 24 hours to find alternative housing. Laura, you're being ridiculous. We're family. Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs. Mom appeared in the hallway, looking appropriately distressed. What's going on? I'm asking everyone to move out by tomorrow evening. This is about the wedding money, isn't it? Madison's voice joined from her doorway. You're throwing us out because you don't want to help your own sister? I'm asking you to leave because for 3 years, you've lived in my house without contributing to expenses while treating me like I exist to serve your needs. The wedding demand was just the final straw. Where are we supposed to go? Mom demanded. That's not my concern anymore. You're all adults. Figure it out. You can't just kick us out, Madison shrieked. We have rights. As a lawyer, I knew exactly what rights they had as long-term guests. Actually, I can. And I am. Dad stepped forward, his face red. If you do this, there's no coming back. You'll have chosen money over family. No, I said calmly. You chose money over family when you moved in here and decided my income belonged to all of you. This is insane, Madison said, her voice climbing toward hysteria. You can't just destroy our family over money. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting myself from people who've spent 3 years taking advantage of my generosity. Generosity? Dad scoffed. We're your parents. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. And I've thanked you by providing housing, food, and financial support for 3 years. That debt is paid. Mom tried a different approach, her voice softening. Sweetheart, you're upset about the wedding. We understand. Maybe we can find a compromise. This isn't about the wedding. It's about respect. It's about boundaries. It's about basic fairness. I kept my voice level, professional. For 3 years, I've supported 3 adults financially, while you've treated me like I don't matter in my own home. That's not true, Mom protested. Isn't it? When's the last time any of you asked how I'm doing? When's the last time you acknowledged that I work 60 hours a week to pay for all of us? When's the last time you treated this like my house instead of a communal property you're entitled to? Silence. You have 24 hours, I repeated. I'll change the locks tomorrow evening. And if we don't go? Dad's voice was challenging. Then I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Madison started crying. Real tears this time. Laura, please. I'm getting married. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life. For a moment, I felt the old familiar tug of guilt, the urge to comfort her, to fix her problems, to be the good sister who put everyone else first. Then I remembered Dr. Chen's words. You can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Madison, you can have a happy wedding, just not one funded by my life savings. But Tyler expects a nice ceremony. His family has money. They'll judge us if we can't afford something decent. And there it was. The real issue. Madison was embarrassed about their financial situation and expected me to solve it for her. Then maybe Tyler's family should pay for it. They shouldn't have to. And I should? She had no answer for that. I spent the rest of the day watching them scramble. Phone calls to relatives, frantic internet searches for apartments, heated discussions about whose fault this was. Nobody seemed to consider that maybe, just maybe, they'd brought this on themselves. Around dinner time, Tyler showed up. I watched through the window as Madison threw herself into his arms, sobbing dramatically. They talked on the porch for 20 minutes before he left, looking confused and frustrated. Madison came back inside with red eyes and fresh determination. Tyler says we can push the wedding back a few months, she announced. He'll talk to his parents about helping with costs. Good for you, I said. Problem solved. No, the problem isn't solved. You're still throwing us out. Yes, I am. But why? We found another solution for the wedding. I stared at her, amazed that she still didn't understand. Madison, this was never just about the wedding. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of family drama. Phone calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all of them wanting to know why I was abandoning my family. Aunt Patricia called 3 times. Uncle Robert sent a long text about family values. Even my grandmother, who I genuinely love, called to ask if I'd lost my mind. "They're telling everyone you've thrown them out over a wedding," she said gently. "That's not exactly true, Grandma." "Then what is true?" I explained the whole situation. The 3 years of free housing, the mounting expenses, the complete lack of contribution to household costs, the final demand for wedding funding. "Oh, honey," she said quietly when I finished. "I had no idea. Most people don't. They're very good at controlling the narrative. What they're asking isn't reasonable." "No, it's not. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." Those words meant more than she could know. My grandmother, the family matriarch, saw the situation clearly. But my parents and Madison weren't giving up. Dad tried reasoning, explaining that jobs were hard to find at his age. Mom tried guilt, talking about how disappointed my late grandfather would be. Madison alternated between rage and tears, sometimes within the same conversation. "Where are we supposed to go?" Mom asked for the 10th time. "There are apartments, extended stay hotels, other relatives. You'll figure it out." "With what money?" "Dad can get a job. You can get a job. Madison can get a job. Revolutionary concept, I know." "You're being cruel," Madison said. "I'm being practical. You're all capable adults who've chosen not to work because I made that choice easy." At 6 p.m. on Tuesday, exactly 24 hours after my ultimatum, they were still there. I came home from work to find them in the living room with their suitcases looking like refugees. "We need more time," Dad said. "You've had 3 years. Just another week. We have some leads on apartments." "No." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "What are you doing?" Mom gasped. "Calling the police to remove trespassers from my property." "You wouldn't," Madison said. "Watch me." Before I could finish dialing, Dad held up his hands. "Fine. We'll go." It took them another 2 hours to pack everything. I watched from the kitchen, drinking tea and feeling strangely calm. This should have been traumatic, but instead it felt like watching a weight being lifted. Mom was the last to leave. She paused at the door, tears in her eyes. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I hope I will be." After they left, I walked through my house alone for the first time in 3 years. The silence was beautiful. My space, my rules, my peace. I made dinner for one person and ate it at my own kitchen table without anyone complaining about my choices. I watched what I wanted on TV without negotiating. I went to bed early without anyone asking me to solve their problems. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The calls started the next morning. Madison, sobbing, begging me to reconsider. Mom, listing all the reasons I was making a terrible mistake. Dad, alternating between anger and attempts at emotional manipulation. I let them all go to voicemail. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with people who refuse to respect them. Work was a relief. Normal problems, billable hours, client meetings that didn't involve family guilt trips. My colleague Jennifer noticed I seemed different. "You look lighter," she said over coffee. "I feel lighter." "Good for you. Family situations can be toxic." She was right. For 3 years, I'd been so focused on keeping everyone happy that I'd forgotten what my own happiness felt like. But the pressure campaign was just beginning. Tyler called that evening. His voice was careful, diplomatic. "Laura, I know things are complicated between you and your family right now. Are they staying with you?" "Temporarily. Just until they find something permanent." I almost felt sorry for him. Poor guy had no idea what he was in for. "Tyler, let me give you some advice. Set clear boundaries about how long temporarily means and stick to them. Otherwise, you'll be having the same conversation with someone else in 3 years. Madison says you've always been jealous of her success." Success. I almost laughed. What success would that be? Her engagement, her happiness, the life she's building? "Tyler, Madison is 28 years old and has never held a job for more than 6 months. I've been supporting her financially for 3 years. What part of that suggests she's successful?" The silence on the other end told me everything. "She said you paid for things because you wanted to help. Did she mention that I was never asked if I wanted to help? Or that helping meant giving up my master bedroom, my home office, and most of my paycheck?" No, she didn't mention that. Ask yourself this. If Madison is so successful and independent, why does she need her sister to pay for her wedding? After Tyler hung up, I felt a familiar mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness that my family's manipulation had spread to someone else. relief that it was no longer my problem to manage. The next few days brought a parade of flying monkeys. Family friends calling to express their disappointment. Distant relatives sharing their opinions about my character. Even my hairdresser had heard the story and felt compelled to weigh in. "Family is everything," she said, while cutting my hair. "You only get one family." "That's exactly the problem," I replied. 2 weeks into my new life of peace and quiet, I discovered something interesting about my family's version of events. Apparently, I was a heartless monster who'd thrown my struggling parents into the street during their time of need. Madison was the innocent victim whose evil sister had destroyed her wedding dreams out of pure spite. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door with a casserole and concerned expression. "How are you holding up, dear?" she asked. "I heard about your family situation." "What exactly did you hear?" "That you've been having some financial difficulties and had to ask your parents to leave." I stared at her. "Mrs. Patterson, I haven't had financial difficulties. I asked my parents to leave because they'd been living here rent-free for 3 years while I paid all their expenses." Her face shifted as she processed this information. "Oh, that's not what I heard." "I'm sure it's not." The narrative control was impressive, I had to admit. Somehow they'd spun 3 years of financial dependence into them helping me through hard times. My demand for basic fairness had become cruelty. Their entitlement had disappeared entirely from the story. But not everyone was buying it. My friend Sarah called that weekend. "I ran into your mom at the grocery store," she said. "She told me some wild story about you kicking them out over jealousy about Madison's wedding. And it didn't add up. Since when do you get jealous of anyone? You're the most generous person I know." I used to be too generous. "So what really happened?" I told her everything. The years of financial support, the mounting expenses, the wedding ultimatum, the complete lack of respect for my boundaries. "Jesus, Laura, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was embarrassed. And because I thought this was normal family stuff. This isn't normal. This is financial abuse." Hearing someone else say it made it real. My family hadn't just been inconsiderate or demanding, they'd been abusive. Sarah wasn't the only one who saw through the spin. My grandmother called again. "I've been thinking about our conversation," she said, "and I've been watching how your parents are handling this situation." "How do you mean?" "They're not taking any responsibility. They're painting themselves as victims, and you as the villain. That tells me everything I need to know about who's really at fault here." "It's hard, Grandma. I keep questioning whether I did the right thing." "Honey, the right thing is rarely the easy thing. You stood up for yourself. That's always right." Her support meant everything, especially as other family members continued their guilt campaign. But the real test came 3 weeks later when Tyler called again. "Laura, we need to talk." His voice was different this time. Strained, frustrated. "What's going on?" "Your family, they're still staying with me. It was supposed to be temporary. But they're not looking for apartments anymore. They're treating my place like it's theirs." I almost smiled. Almost. "Welcome to my world, Tyler. Madison keeps asking me to pay for wedding expenses. She says since you won't help, I need to step up and prove I love her. And what do you think about that?" "I think I'm starting to understand why you asked them to leave." Tyler's call was the first crack in my family's united front. But it wouldn't be the last. "They've been here 3 weeks," he continued, "and your father hasn't applied for a single job. Your mother complains about everything from the water pressure to the brand of coffee I buy. And Madison what? She's planning this enormous wedding like money isn't an issue. She's looking at dresses that cost more than my car. When I tried to suggest a smaller ceremony, she accused me of not loving her enough to want her dream wedding." I felt a familiar pang of sympathy for this man who was discovering what I'd known for years. My family's dreams always came with someone else's price tag. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What did Madison tell you about how she's been supporting herself the last few years?" The pause was telling. "She said she was between jobs, focusing on wedding planning." "For 3 years?" "Well, she said she was helping take care of your parents." "By helping? You mean living rent-free while I paid for everything?" Another pause. She made it sound like she was making sacrifices. The only sacrifice Madison had made was giving up any pretense of independence, but I didn't say that. Tyler was figuring it out on his own. "Look," he said finally, "I called because I need advice. How do I get them to leave without destroying my relationship with Madison?" "You probably can't do both." "What do you mean?" "Tyler, Madison has never learned that her actions have consequences because someone always rescues her from those consequences. If you rescue her now, you'll be rescuing her for the rest of your relationship. But I love her. I love her too. That's why I spent 3 years enabling her. Love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. After we hung up, I realized something important. I no longer felt guilty about my decision. I felt sorry for Tyler, sorry for my parents who'd created this mess, even sorry for Madison who'd never learned basic adult skills. But I didn't feel guilty for protecting myself. That clarity lasted exactly 2 days until Madison showed up at my office. She walked into the lobby looking perfectly put together, designer clothes and fresh manicure, every inch the successful young woman she'd never actually been. My assistant buzzed me. "Laura, your sister is here. She says it's urgent." Against my better judgment, I agreed to see her. Madison swept into my office like she owned it, settling into the chair across from my desk with practiced elegance. "Nice office," she said, looking around. "Success suits you." I waited. Madison never gave compliments without wanting something. "I came to apologize," she said finally. "That was unexpected. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realize we might have taken advantage of your generosity." Might have. The qualifier was telling. "I want to make things right between us," she continued. "Family is too important to lose over money." "What exactly are you proposing?" "Tyler and I will pay you back. Not all at once, obviously, but we'll set up a payment plan, and we'll pay for our own wedding. Something small and reasonable." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the catch, Madison?" Her composed mask slipped slightly. "There's no catch. I just want my sister back." "Then why do you look like you're about to ask me for something?" She fidgeted with her purse strap, a tell I'd learned to recognize years ago. "Well, the thing is, Tyler's place is really small for 4 people, and his lease has some restrictions about long-term guests. So we were hoping—" There it was. "You want to move back in?" "Just temporarily, just until we find something permanent. And we'd pay rent this time." "I promise." I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister's face. She looked sincere, but Madison had always been good at looking sincere when she wanted something. "How much rent?" We were thinking maybe $800 a month. My mortgage alone was $2,800. Add utilities, property taxes, insurance, and basic maintenance, and $800 wouldn't cover a quarter of the actual costs. But it was progress from the previous offer of $500. "And how long is temporarily this time?" 6 months max. Just until we get married and find our own place. "Where's the wedding going to be?" "We're looking at some smaller venues. Maybe something in the 15,000 range." 15,000. Still ridiculous for someone with no income, but better than 28,000. "Madison, why should I trust you this time?" "Because I've learned my lesson. I know I was wrong before." "What lesson exactly did you learn?" She shifted uncomfortably. "That family relationships are more important than money." Wrong answer. The lesson should have been that adults support themselves and contribute fairly to shared expenses. But Madison was still viewing this as a money versus family issue instead of a respect and boundaries issue. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully, "but I'm not ready to change my mind about the living situation." Her composed mask cracked further. "Laura, please, Tyler's about to kick us out too. We have nowhere else to go." "What about Mom and Dad? They found an apartment, right?" "They're in a studio. There's barely room for them, let alone Madison and me." So my parents had landed somewhere. Probably assisted living or a senior community they could actually afford. Good for them. "Madison, you're 28 years old with a college degree. You can find work, earn money, and rent your own apartment like every other adult in America. But the job market is terrible, and most places want experience I don't have because I've been out of work helping the family." Helping the family. She'd managed to reframe 3 years of unemployment as family service. "You've been out of work because you chose not to work. That's not fair. Someone had to take care of Mom and Dad. What care did they need? Dad isn't disabled, and Mom is perfectly capable." Madison opened and closed her mouth like a fish. Because the truth was, our parents hadn't needed care. They'd needed financial support, which I'd provided while Madison enjoyed the benefits without contributing. "Look," she said, changing tactics. "Tyler is starting to ask questions about money and responsibilities. If I don't figure something out soon, he might call off the engagement." And there was the real issue. Madison wasn't apologizing because she'd learned anything. She was apologizing because her safety net was disappearing. "Maybe that would be best for both of you." Madison's eyes widened in shock. "How can you say that? I love Tyler." "Do you? Or do you love the idea of being married and having someone else solve your financial problems?" "That's a horrible thing to say." "Madison, what exactly do you bring to this relationship besides expecting Tyler to pay for everything?" The question hung in the air between us. I could see her scrambling for an answer, and I could see the moment she realized she didn't have one. "I bring love," she said finally, but her voice was small. Love isn't enough for a marriage. You need partnership, shared responsibility, mutual respect. What you're offering Tyler is what you offered me. The privilege of funding your lifestyle while getting guilt and manipulation in return. Madison stood up abruptly. Her composure finally shattered. You've become cold, Laura. Success has made you cold. No, I said quietly. Setting boundaries has made me healthier. Madison left my office in tears, and I felt that familiar twist of guilt in my stomach. But this time, I recognized it for what it was. Programming. Years of conditioning that made me feel responsible for other people's emotions, even when those emotions were the result of their own poor choices. I called Dr. Chen that evening. How do you feel about how the conversation went? She asked. Guilty, but also clear. I could see exactly what she was doing, and I didn't fall for it. That's growth. It doesn't feel good. Growth rarely does. You're changing patterns that have been in place your whole life. That's hard work. She looked so lost when she left. Madison is lost. But Laura, you're not responsible for finding her. She has to do that work herself. Dr. Chen was right, but it still hurt to watch my sister struggle. The difference was that now I understood the difference between helping and enabling. Over the next few weeks, I heard updates through the family grapevine. Madison and Tyler had broken up. She'd moved in with a friend. My parents were managing in their studio apartment, with Dad working part-time at a hardware store and Mom doing data entry from home. The family narrative had shifted again. Now I was the successful sister who'd abandoned her family in their time of need. The sister who'd chosen money over love, career over family, selfishness over sacrifice. I might have bought into that narrative a year ago, but therapy had given me tools to recognize manipulation. My family's version of events required me to believe that wanting basic respect in my own home was selfish, that expecting adults to support themselves was cruel, that refusing to fund other people's dreams was abandonment. I didn't believe any of that anymore. But the real test of my resolve came 6 months later when Madison called me at 2 a.m, sobbing. Laura, I need help. I sat up in bed, immediately alert. What's wrong? Are you hurt? I'm pregnant. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Madison, unemployed and single, was having a baby. Are you sure? I took 3 tests. I went to a clinic. I'm sure. Who's the father? Some guy I met at a bar. I don't even have his real number. My heart broke for her. This was exactly the kind of crisis my family specialized in creating, the kind that required immediate rescue from someone else. What do you need? I asked, already knowing the answer. I can't afford a baby, Laura. I can barely afford to feed myself. I need money for doctor visits. And I need somewhere to live with a baby, and I need help. There it was. The emergency that would justify everything. The crisis that would make me the villain if I didn't ride to the rescue. My pregnant sister, alone and desperate, needing her successful sister to save her. A year ago, I would have invited her back immediately. I would have paid for everything, supported her through the pregnancy and beyond, convinced myself that this was what family did. Madison, I'm sorry you're going through this. Will you help me? The question hung between us like a bridge I could choose to cross or burn. I'll help you research resources, Medicaid for prenatal care, WIC for nutrition assistance, housing programs for single mothers. There are support systems available. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I know. Laura, please. I have nowhere else to turn. Yes, you do. You have the same options every other pregnant woman in your situation has. You can apply for assistance programs, find work that accommodates pregnancy, reach out to the baby's father, or consider adoption if you're not ready to be a parent. I can't do this alone. You don't have to do it alone. There are support systems, counselors, programs designed to help. But Madison, I can't be your only support system anymore. The silence on the other end was devastating. So that's it? She whispered. Your own sister is pregnant and scared, and you're going to abandon her? I'm not abandoning you. I'm refusing to enable you. There's a difference. She hung up without another word. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I stared at the ceiling, questioning everything. Was I being heartless? Was I abandoning my sister when she needed me most? Was I so focused on boundaries that I'd lost my compassion? By morning, I had my answer. Compassion didn't require me to sacrifice my financial security and emotional well-being. Helping didn't have to mean taking complete responsibility for someone else's life. I called Dr. Chen for an emergency session. You're second-guessing yourself, she observed after I told her about Madison's call. Shouldn't I be? She's pregnant and alone. She's pregnant and has choices to make about her future. You can support her without rescuing her. What if something happens to her? What if she can't handle this? Laura, what if she can? What if being forced to handle her own crisis is exactly what Madison needs to finally grow up? It was a hard truth, but Dr. Chen was right. Every time I'd rescued Madison from consequences, I'd prevented her from learning how to handle difficult situations. I'd kept her dependent instead of helping her become independent. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I researched every available resource for pregnant women in Madison's situation: health insurance programs, nutrition assistance, housing help, job training programs, even parenting classes. I compiled everything into a detailed document and emailed it to her with a note. I believe in your ability to handle this. Here are tools to help you succeed. She didn't respond. Over the next few months, I heard updates through family channels. Madison had applied for Medicaid and WIC. She'd moved into a transitional housing program for pregnant women. She'd even gotten a part-time job at a childcare center that would let her bring the baby to work. She was handling it. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but she was handling it. My parents, meanwhile, had settled into their new reality. Dad's part-time job had turned into full-time work when his boss recognized his experience. Mom had discovered she actually enjoyed data entry and was considering going back to school for computer skills training. They were handling it too. The family gatherings I heard about through my grandmother were smaller, quieter affairs. Less drama, fewer financial crises, more actual conversation about people's lives instead of their emergencies. I wasn't invited to these gatherings, and that hurt. But I also wasn't being asked to fund them, manage them, or fix whatever went wrong. I was learning to live with the hurt while appreciating the peace. A year after my ultimatum, I ran into Tyler at a coffee shop downtown. He looked good, relaxed in a way I'd never seen when he was with Madison. "Laura," he said, approaching my table hesitantly. "How are you?" "I'm well. You look good." "I feel good." "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For the conversation we had about boundaries. It changed my life." "How so?" "I realized that I was about to marry someone who expected me to solve all her problems while contributing nothing to solutions. That's not partnership. Are you seeing anyone?" "Actually, yes. Someone who works as hard as I do, who pays her own bills, who treats me like a partner instead of a bank account." I smiled, genuinely happy for him. "That sounds wonderful. Madison's baby is beautiful, by the way. She posts pictures sometimes." My heart clenched. I hadn't seen pictures of my nephew, didn't even know if it was a boy or girl. But Tyler's casual mention told me Madison was doing well enough to maintain a social media presence. Is she okay?" "From what I can tell, she's figuring it out. The baby seems healthy and happy." After Tyler left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences. My choice to set boundaries had consequences I was still living with: lost relationships, family gatherings I wasn't part of, a nephew I might never meet. But it also had consequences I was grateful for: financial security I'd never had before, peace in my own home, relationships based on mutual respect instead of financial dependence, a sense of self-worth that wasn't tied to my usefulness to others. I drove home to my quiet house, made dinner for one, and settled in to watch a movie I'd chosen without consulting anyone else's preferences. My phone didn't ring with family emergencies. No one asked me to solve their problems or fund their dreams. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself instead of for other people's approval. It was lonely sometimes, but it was also authentic in a way my old life had never been. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to set boundaries with people who refuse to respect them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their worst behaviors. And remember, you can love someone without funding their lifestyle. You can support someone without sacrificing yourself. Real family celebrates your success instead of just benefiting from it. I'm Laura, I'm 31 years old, and I finally learned the difference between being used and being loved. The lesson cost me relationships I thought I couldn't live without, but it gave me a life I didn't know I deserved. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most. But sometimes, those are exactly the boundaries that need to be set.